In my last video, we looked at Joe Burrow and what makes him the top quarterback in this class. Due to his traits, he's likely the first overall pick in this entire draft. While this may be the case, in this video, I wanted to break down Chase Young and give you my thoughts on why many think he's the best overall player, even including Burrow. Last season, Young was a unanimous All-American after he lit up college football with 16.5 sacks and 21 tackles for loss. Combine that with 7 forced fumbles, the dude was straight up unstoppable for the Buckeyes. He didn't just have the highlight plays. He consistently changed offensive plans on a game-by-game basis, making an impact even when you couldn't see it on the stat sheet. For this breakdown, we'll start with things that I like, move on to some things that I didn't like, and then wrap it up with his pro comparison. Additionally, I wanted to answer the major question mark that many people seem to have when they discuss Young. What happened in the Clemson game, and why did it seem like he disappeared? I'll give you all my thoughts on that at the very end of this video. Let's start with the first thing that pops up when you turn on his film, and that's his ridiculous burst off the line of scrimmage. This is what makes him an incredibly dangerous pass rusher. He typically times the snap well and immediately allows him to gain an advantage over most offensive tackles he faced. Even before the offensive tackle moved, Young would be finished with his first full step before his opponent even left the line of scrimmage. He's that quick. That initial speed and burst helped him create many of his sacks and pressures. While speed and pure athleticism are always positives, Young is way more than these two traits. If you're only physically dominant in college without developing technique, you won't make it very far in the NFL. This is not the case for Chase Young. What makes him stand out and what really separates him from every other edge rusher in this class is how well he pairs his hands and feet together. He's a master at using footwork to set up incredibly timed hand swipes in order to keep his frame clean. I love how he deflects punches and redirects blockers' hands by understanding how to attack the blocker at their wrists and elbows. One thing that Young has absolutely mastered during his time with the Buckeyes is the swipe and rip move, which combines all these traits. Check out this sack against Cincinnati. After the snap, he took 3 steps forward. On his 3rd step, he stepped inside with a nice head fake, all in an effort to open the door back outside. It clearly worked on this play. The left tackle stopped his feet, lunged at his target, and then Young swiped his hands before stepping outside to rip underneath and get by. Once he was clear of the blocker's hands, he then flattened his pursuit towards the quarterback and finished him for the sack. This swipe and rip move that I showed is by far Young's favorite and his most effective move that he offers. As I said before, he perfected it while he was in college. He used it over and over again, and it consistently worked against offensive linemen all season long. The great news is that this move and how well he uses it should still be effective in the pros. The subtlety to the way he swipes and moves his body should all still work even against some of the best offensive linemen at the next level. While the swipe and rip move is super effective, Young has also shown flashes of pure dominance with a nasty pocket collapsing speed to power bull rush. He understands the concept of one arm is longer than two, and he generates so much force through his strong hands that he can knock an offensive lineman backwards. I think he needs to get more consistent at knowing when to use this move and also the timing on when to disengage and finish the rush, but he has shown enough that makes me very excited for this move as well. The other move that Young uses effectively is a swim move, which he uses to win inside. Teams would send double teams to him left and right, and he would use his well-timed hands and footwork to swim over an offensive lineman's inside shoulder. Similar to what I said about his speed to power bull rush, I think he needs to get a better feel for when to use this move, but again, I feel like he can still win with this move pretty effectively in the pros as well. From a pass rush standpoint, I think he still has work to do in terms of learning all the associated counters and second effort type of moves after his first rush stalls. But like I've said before, he has shown flashes of having that ability to impact a quarterback even when things don't go right immediately after the snap. While Young has the strength and skill set to 1-gap, 2-gap, play up and down the line of scrimmage anywhere from a 5-tech to a wide 9, I think he'd be at his best 1-gapping from a wide 9 position. He definitely has the versatility, and I imagine the team that takes him will want to use him in a specialized role early. But with a player like Young, I'm in the opinion that you just can't overthink it. Let him dominate offensive tackles one-on-one. That's his strengths. Let him do that for you, and he's well worth the high pick he's going to be selected at. So based on some of the plays you've seen so far, it's clear that Young has his positives. He's built like a tank, uses his hands extremely well, and his potential as a lethal pass rusher due to his burst off the line of scrimmage and how he pairs this with his hands and feet make him a clear top 2 player in this draft. Now, because this is a Sam Gold film room, we have to talk about some of his negatives. For this breakdown, I'm going to give you the top 2 that I saw from his film. The first negative that I saw was that his motor wasn't always the strongest. You heard the stories of guys chasing ball carriers down the field just to tackle them from behind to save a big play, and I just don't really get the sense that that profile really describes Young. Young, from my point of view, is an in-front-of-me type of player. Now, I'm not saying his motor is bad or that he gives up on plays or anything like that. What I am saying is that I think his motor is roughly average. This point leads me to my second negative. I think this issue shows up while he's defending the run. As a run defender, Young isn't exceptionally better than anybody else. He was above average in college, and truthfully that kind of surprised me based on his obvious gifts. He has hands to stack, he created some pretty big tackles for loss, but on a play-by-play basis where he's doing the mundane stack and shed and the force duties on the edge, I honestly just expected more. At times he would get pushed backwards giving up ground, also misdirections, by God, were the absolute death of him. He bit on so many fakes, it killed me. Teams would run zone read options directly at him, and it was honestly a coin flip if he was going to read it correctly. This happened way too frequently for me to ignore. Now, after hearing all of this, the question you might ask is, does this mean that Young is a liability against the run? To that, I say no. Even though he's not an elite run stuffer, he was still above average from a college perspective. I expect that his pure physical gifts and his awesome hands should help him avoid that label. Moving on, after looking at his top strengths and his top weaknesses, let's talk about his pro comparison. For me, I think Young reminds me of Julius Peppers. Peppers, who went second overall back in 2002, was a freak athlete with speed, power, and great hands coming out of college. He had the dominating ability to create havoc in the backfield, and this helped him win Rookie Defensive Player of the Year. Now, Peppers went to the Pro Bowl 9 times, was a first-team All-Pro and a second-team All-Pro 3 times each, and he finished his professional career with over 150 sacks. These are extremely lofty standards that we are holding Young up to, but in my opinion, that's the level of absolute potential that I think Young has. He will be a top 3 pick in this draft, and I think based on everything I've seen, he completely deserves it. Now, before we end this breakdown, I wanted to address one last thing in regards to Young. A common argument against him as a top prospect comes down to his lack of production in his final 3 games. This most notably gets brought up whenever you discuss his game against Clemson. I feel like it's important to address this. After studying this tape, there is some truth to the fact that he didn't directly impact the quarterback like he did in his previous games. However, and this is a gigantic however, Clemson specifically game planned their protection to remove him as a factor. They sent chips by tight ends and running backs, they sent double teams with guards and tackles, and they purposely ran sweeps and play action in his direction in order to slow him down. Clemson went out of their way to make his game difficult, but even so, he still had an impact even though you can't see it on the box score. Since Young was so frequently game planned against, this allowed other defenders much easier games. Since Clemson had their tight ends and running backs released late or not at all to Young's side, it made it easier for linebackers in coverage to stop them from getting open. This net effect helped reduce the number of targets that Trevor Lawrence could look at from the very beginning of each play. Now, I know we all want sacks. Trust me, I wanted to see him light it up this game. But the simple truth is that rushing the passer isn't always an individual game. Offensive scheme took away a lot of his one-on-one opportunities. Additionally, the Buckeyes even sacrificed him from a defensive standpoint just to draw more double teams, opening it up for other defenders. In my opinion, if you solely look at his box scores from these games and point to them as your main detractor as to why you think Young is overrated, I think you're being disingenuous. This completely ignores Young's true value. When he's on the field, he's going to make an impact even when it isn't obvious. To wrap this up, Young has serious all-pro potential right out of the gate. He's one of the best edge rushers I've ever scouted. Whatever team drafts him, whether that be Washington at 2 or Detroit at 3, Young is going to make them extremely happy. Don't overthink it, he's an incredible prospect, and not only is he the best defensive player in the draft, he's the best overall player as well. Well, that's all I have for you. I'm going to do one more video before the NFL draft, and then after that, I'll have a full list of offseason topics I plan on getting to after this is over. Do me a favor and let me know if you have any ideas for any future videos. I'm always happy to consider them, and truthfully, I'm just happy to be fully back and doing these videos for you in the first place. Thanks again for watching, and if you want to support my work, you can follow the link to my Patreon account, and you can find me on Twitter at Samuel R. Gold.